What kind of hotel lets a guest scream at their staff like that and does nothing? That question hit Ezra Dalton like a punch to the chest. He was sitting in his downtown office, a floor-to-ceiling view of the city behind him, when his assistant dropped a customer review on his desk. The guest had stayed at one of the company's 11 boutique hotels, specifically the lakeside location, the one closest to the ski slopes. The complaint didn't name names, just said a woman in housekeeping had been humiliated by a VIP guest in the hallway while a manager stood by and didn't lift a finger. Ezra had inherited the hotel chain from his father 5 years ago after working in finance. He doubled the company's size, modernized the booking system, and tightened costs. But lately, his gut had been restless. He was only getting updates through district managers now. The places no longer felt like his. He stood up and looked at the framed photo of his dad on the wall. You'd have gone down there yourself, wouldn't you? The lakeside location was one of the only ones he hadn't visited personally. It had opened right before the pandemic, and he'd pushed most of the oversight to the local manager, a guy named Travis who had transferred from a resort in Nevada. Ezra had never met him in person, only seen his face on video calls. 3 days later, Ezra checked into his own hotel. He wore a gray beanie, an oversized company-issued bellhop jacket, and fake glasses. A little beard stubble helped. No one batted an eye. It was a corporate chain, and most of the staff hadn't met the CEO, especially newer hires. He'd created a fake resume, said his name was Illy from corporate doing training rotations. Travis greeted him in the back hallway. "You're the new guy for weekend shifts?" he asked, barely glancing up from his phone. "Yeah," Ezra said, adjusting the strap on the luggage cart. "Just here to learn the ropes." Travis shoved a walkie into Ezra's hand. "Keep the carts out of the lobby unless it's packed. Don't talk to guests unless they talk to you first. And don't get in the way of VIPs. You'll know who they are. They'll make sure of it." The hotel was busy booked out for a winter conference. The lobby was warm and buzzing, and Ezra fell into the rhythm fast. He liked the work. He liked the bone-tired feeling in his legs after a long shift. He helped an elderly couple to their room, made a kid laugh by spinning the luggage cart, and took mental notes of everything that felt off. Housekeeping was clearly understaffed. He saw the same 3 women cleaning entire floors. One of them, Julia, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a calm voice, always smiled when she passed him. "Long day?" Ezra asked once, pushing a cart as she came out of a suite. "Long week," she said, then laughed softly. "But this job pays my son's tuition, so I keep smiling." The next afternoon, everything changed. A woman in red heels stepped out of the elevator with a designer bag and sunglasses too big for her face. Ezra was waiting nearby with a guest's luggage. He recognized her from the internal profile Travis had shown him earlier. Heather Langford, a longtime VIP, friend of someone on the board. She stayed at the hotels often and expected to be catered to. Julia stepped out of a room a few feet down the hall, holding a trash bag and a spray bottle. Heather's face wrinkled. "Excuse me, do you not see me here?" Julia looked up. "Sorry, ma'am, just finishing up." "Don't talk back," Heather snapped. "You're leaving your cleaning junk out where guests walk. It smells God. Do you people not know how to do your jobs?" Julia froze. Ezra's chest tightened. His hand gripped the cart handle. Heather kept going. "Pick it up. Now, and next time, try not to look like you were dragged out of a laundry basket." Ezra looked down the hallway. Travis was standing at the corner. He'd been watching the whole thing. He didn't move. He didn't say a word. Julia slowly picked up the bag, eyes down, and went back into the room. Heather turned and walked toward Ezra without a glance. "Well, don't just stand there. My bags." Ezra's jaw clenched. He forced himself to nod and followed her to her suite. That night, he sat on the edge of the bunk in the employee quarters, staring at the wall. His hands were still shaking. He didn't sleep. By sunrise, Ezra had made up his mind. He couldn't confront anything, yet not without understanding the full picture. But he knew two things. Travis had stood by and watched a guest verbally attack a staff member, and Julia hadn't flinched. She'd absorbed it like someone used to being stepped on. The next 36 hours were a blur of elevator runs, late check-ins, and back hallway logistics. Ezra rotated between bellhop shifts and helping in laundry when things backed up. He kept his head down but his eyes wide open. He saw things no report had captured. One afternoon, as he hauled linens to the service room, he passed the break room and paused. "I'm telling you," he just walked away, said a voice. Didn't even look at her. Ezra leaned closer. Two housekeepers sat by the vending machine, whispering. One of them was named Lydia. She'd been there longer than Julia and was known for covering weekend doubles when someone called out. The other woman shook her head. And she still came in early this morning. No one else would. Ezra stepped in casually, pretending to grab a water bottle. "You all work every weekend?" he asked, keeping his tone light. Lydia looked up. "If you want hours, yes, but don't expect help from the front desk if you're drowning. All they care about is the VIPs." The other woman added, "And Travis. He only shows up when he's got someone to impress. Otherwise, he's locked in his office." Ezra didn't say anything. He just nodded, cracked the bottle open, and left. That night, he shadowed the night shift manager, a woman named Serena. She was sharp and efficient, clearly holding together more than her job description required. When the heater failed in one of the corner rooms, she coordinated maintenance, moved the guests, and handled the refund without blinking. "You always this calm?" he asked. Serena glanced at him, then back at the front desk screen. "Calm's how you survive here, especially when Travis dumps everything on you and disappears." Ezra raised an eyebrow. "He doesn't help out." Serena gave a dry laugh. "He helps his ego, that's about it. I've run this place more than he has, but I don't have the title or the pay to show for it." Ezra watched her handle 3 separate guest requests in under 5 minutes. She spoke with clarity, never rushed, never bitter. But her eyes had the look of someone running on fumes. The next afternoon, Ezra offered to help Julia with turned-on service. She hesitated at first, but eventually handed him a fresh stack of towels. "Your son doing all right at school?" he asked as they moved down the hallway. She nodded. "He's in his first year, engineering. I haven't seen him in months, but he sends texts when he can." They stepped into a room. It was spotless, like every other one she'd handled. "You always work this fast?" Ezra asked. Julia shrugged. "If don't finish every room by 4, I get written up. Doesn't matter if we're short." "Shorts every day from what I've seen." She didn't respond right away. Then she said, "They cut 2 people last winter. Said it was budget, never hired replacements, we've just kept going." Ezra stood still for a beat. "You ever talk to Travis about hiring more?" Julia looked at him like he'd asked whether snow melted uphill. "He says we're operationally lean, that's what he calls it." Ezra didn't reply. He just picked up the trash bag and followed her to the next room. Later that night, he walked past Travis's office. The light was on. Ezra knocked. "Yeah," Travis called. He poked his head in. "You got a minute?" Travis was leaned back in his chair, scrolling through something on his tablet. "What's up?" "Just wondering how long the housekeeping team's been short-staffed. Everyone's saying they're drowning." Travis looked up annoyed. "They're fine. We rotate floaters when needed." "I haven't seen any floaters." "Well, that's probably because you're not in the loop yet. Give it a few weeks before you start trying to fix stuff." Ezra's face didn't move. "Got it." He closed the door without another word. The next day brought the tipping point. It started with a snowstorm. Flights were delayed, guests backed up in the lobby, and housekeeping was behind by nearly an hour. Ezra was juggling carts when Heather Langford reappeared. She stood in front of the front desk, tapping her shoe rapidly. Serena was handling 3 calls and trying to calm an irate couple whose room hadn't been cleaned. Heather raised her voice. "I requested my suite be turned down by 3. It's almost 4:30. Serena gave her the practiced, polite smile Ezra had come to recognize. "Understand, ma'am. We're running a little behind due to the storm, but we'll have someone up there shortly." "I don't want shortly. Want it done now. And I don't want that same woman from the other day. She was rude." Ezra froze. Serena's tone didn't change. "Assure you, ma'am, no one here is rude. Everyone's doing their best." Heather waved her hand. "Just send someone who speaks English properly and doesn't look half asleep." That was it. Ezra stepped forward. "Ma'am, that's not acceptable." Heather turned to him, surprised. "Excuse me. You don't get to make comments like that about our staff, especially when they've done nothing wrong." Serena looked up, eyes wide. Heather's mouth twisted. "And who exactly are you?" Ezra pulled off the glasses he'd worn all week, then reached into his coat and took out his ID badge. The real one. "Ezra Dalton," he said, "CEO." The silence that followed was absolute. Heather's face went pale. "This is absurd. I'll speak to the board." "You can," he said calmly. "But you won't be staying in any of our hotels again. Your behavior has been consistently abusive. We don't tolerate that." She opened her mouth, then closed it. Without another word, she turned and walked out the front door. Ezra turned to Serena. "You all right?" She nodded, still stunned. "Didn't see that coming." "I didn't either, but I'm glad I did it." He stepped around the counter and looked toward the hallway where Julia had just appeared, carrying a fresh set of towels. She paused, confused by the scene. Ezra gave her a small nod. "You're done for the day, full pay, take the evening off." Julia blinked. "Why?" "Because you've earned it 10 times over." She hesitated, then gave a quiet nod and disappeared down the back hallway. Ezra turned back to Serena. "Where's Travis?" She didn't answer, just tilted her head toward the office. Ezra walked there slowly, feeling every step. He knocked once, then opened the door. Travis looked up from his screen. "Something wrong?" Ezra closed the door behind him. "You're done here." "What?" "You heard me." "You can't be serious." "I'm absolutely serious. You ignored abuse. You let your staff drown. You've been invisible when they needed leadership. This is over." Travis stood abruptly. "I've hit every number you asked for." "At what cost?" Travis opened his mouth, but Ezra shook his head. "Security's on the way. You'll be escorted out." Ezra stepped out into the hallway and took a long breath. He didn't feel triumphant, he felt responsible. And he knew the hard part was just beginning. Ezra didn't leave the hotel that night. After Travis was escorted out of the building, Ezra stayed behind the front desk with Serena, helping her sort through a backlog of room requests. The storm had doubled the usual guest volume, and with Travis gone, there was no one else to coordinate until a temporary replacement could be flown in. Around 2 in the morning, Serena glanced over at him between guest check-ins. "You're really staying the night?" she asked. Ezra nodded, typing something into the terminal. "I'm not going to disappear after dropping a bomb like that. You've all carried this place long enough." Serena didn't respond at first. She just handed a key card to a guest waiting nearby. When the lobby finally emptied, she sat down on the edge of the desk. "You want to know something strange?" Kept thinking someone from corporate would notice. That maybe, eventually, it would catch up to him. but after a while, you stop believing anyone's actually watching. Ezra leaned against the counter. I stopped watching, that's on me. She looked at him for a moment. You're here now, that counts. The following morning, Ezra met with every department head in the staff break room. No suits, no press, just him, a worn legal pad, and a pot of coffee that had already gone cold. He stood by the whiteboard and waited for the room to settle. Everyone looked wary. A few kept their arms crossed. No one quite knew what came next. I'm not here to make promises can't keep, he began. But I will say this, what I saw this week shouldn't have been possible. You've been working under pressure that no one signed up for, and if I hadn't seen it myself, I wouldn't have believed it. No one interrupted. I've already sent HR a list of immediate adjustments. First, no more write-ups for falling behind on room turnover when short-staffed. That's a systemic failure, not a personal one. He looked at Lydia, who was sitting in the back beside Julia. Second, I've approved overtime pay retroactively for the last 6 pay periods for any certified double shifts. You'll see it on your next check. A quiet murmur moved through the room. Third, I'm temporarily assigning Serena as acting general manager while we search for a permanent replacement. She'll have full authority to make staffing, scheduling, and policy decisions. Serena blinked. You're serious? Ezra nodded. You've already been doing the job. It's time you had the title and the pay. One of the front desk assistants let out a single breath that sounded almost like a laugh. Ezra turned slightly and addressed the entire room again. I'm not going to stand up here and pretend we can fix everything overnight, but I'm staying on site for the next week. I want every department head to prepare a list of what you need. Equipment, people, training, anything. We'll prioritize it together. After the meeting, people filed out slowly. Some nodded at him. A few didn't. Ezra didn't expect instant trust. He just needed them to see that he wasn't leaving this time. Later that afternoon, he found Julia in the supply closet, restocking towels onto the cart with quiet efficiency. He knocked on the doorframe. Got a minute? She turned, surprised, and stepped back to let him in. I wasn't sure if I'd see you today, she said. I wanted to check in, not about the work, about you. She hesitated, folding a towel. I've gotten through worse. That's not the point. You shouldn't have had to get through that at all. She kept folding. I've worked places where management didn't even bother learning our names. Ezra leaned slightly against the wall. That's changing, starting now. She looked at him, then down at her hands. I'm not asking for special treatment. You're not getting special treatment, you're getting fairness and respect. She gave a small nod, then picked up the next stack of linens. Then I'll keep doing my part. By the end of the week, Serena had posted a revised shift rotation that allowed housekeeping to stagger their start times, easing the burden during peak hours. Ezra approved the cost increase without hesitation. He also spent time with maintenance, who had been running with only 2 techs for nearly 8 months. One of them, Manny, walked Ezra through the service logs, showing how many requests had been deferred due to lack of manpower. Ezra approved a 3rd hire on the spot and arranged for a contracting firm to assist until the new employee could be onboarded. In the kitchen, the head chef, Arturo, explained how the staff had been forced to prep full banquet menus with a skeleton team whenever conference groups checked in. Ezra ate lunch in the back with them, reviewing purchase orders and listening instead of talking. One afternoon, while Serena was reviewing a vendor invoice at the front desk, Ezra approached quietly. I've been thinking, he said, if you're open to it, I'd like you to consider taking the GM role permanently. She looked up stunned. You're offering full placement. I've seen how you operate. You don't just keep things moving, you lead. And that's what this place needs. Serena folded the invoice slowly. I've never had someone ask, just tell. I'm not Travis. She gave a cautious smile. I'll think about it. You should. The job's yours if you want it. That evening, Ezra met with HR by video call to begin drafting a formal policy about guest conduct. He didn't want what happened with Heather Langford to ever repeat itself. The new policy would grant staff the right to escalate any abusive guest behavior without fear of retaliation or job loss. During a follow-up call with the board, one of the directors cautiously raised the issue of Heather's connections. Ezra didn't waver. Her connections don't matter, our people do. By the end of the week, the tone inside the hotel had shifted. Not dramatically. No one was cheering or high-fiving, but the tension had eased. People weren't looking over their shoulders as often. And for the first time in a long while, staff were actually sitting down during breaks instead of using the time to catch up on late tasks. Ezra stood outside one of the side entrances late Friday night, watching snow fall onto the empty valet loop. Julia passed by him on her way to her car, pulling her coat tighter. "You're still here?" she asked. "Still learning." She paused. "Feels different this week. Lighter." He looked toward the falling snow. "It's a start." She nodded once, then walked toward her car. Ezra stayed a few minutes longer, listening to the quiet. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was standing inside his company again, not above it. Ezra stepped off the elevator and into the hotel's lower conference lounge, where he'd called a staff meeting for the final afternoon of his stay. It wasn't mandatory, but nearly everyone showed up. Word had spread over the past week not just about Travis's removal, but about what had followed. No big announcements had been made, no press releases, just quiet decisions that carried weight. He greeted employees as they came in. Some gave polite nods, others were more cautious. These were people used to watching leaders come and go. Promises didn't mean much until they held. He waited until the room had settled, then glanced down at the notes in his hand. He didn't use them. "I've spent the last week here learning how this place actually runs," he said. "Not from reports or dashboards, but from all of you. And I need you to know something. It's not just that I missed what was happening. It's that I trusted a system that kept me blind to it." A few heads tilted, listening more closely now. This hotel didn't stay afloat because of policies or performance metrics. It stayed afloat because you stepped in where others wouldn't. You covered shifts you shouldn't have had to. You solved problems without authority or recognition. And some of you, he paused, glancing toward the back, where Serena stood next to the lead concierge, ran departments without ever being given the title or support. He waited a beat, measuring his words. "So here's what's changing." He stepped aside as an assistant wheeled in a small board listing a series of action items. He read them aloud, one by one, with no embellishment. "First, we're creating a rotating relief pool for housekeeping and maintenance. Staff from nearby properties will be trained to fill in during high-volume periods. That means no more doubling workloads without backup." He turned slightly. "Second, we've added 2 full-time maintenance positions to this property. The hiring process starts next week. Until then, we've contracted a local firm to cover emergency requests." He let the words settle before continuing. "Third, Serena has accepted the permanent general manager role. Her compensation and authority will match the position fully. She'll have direct access to me going forward." There was no applause, just a low murmur of acknowledgement. Ezra didn't want fanfare. He wanted clarity. He moved to the final point. "Fourth, we're implementing a policy across all locations effective immediately empowering any staff member to report guest misconduct without fear of discipline or retaliation. That includes verbal abuse, discriminatory language, and any behavior that undermines your safety or dignity." He met the eyes of several employees as he spoke. No one needed to say Heather's name. There's a reporting process being rolled out next week. Anonymous if needed. And yes, we will act on every single one. He stepped back and let the room breathe. When Julia raised her hand, he nodded. What happens when a guest threatens to leave over it? She asked, or tells corporate they're being mistreated. Ezra answered without hesitation. Then they can leave, he said. We don't build loyalty by tolerating abuse. We build it by protecting the people who show up every day. Julia gave a small nod and lowered her hand. After the meeting, most employees filed out quietly, heading back to shifts or storage rooms or the laundry bay. Ezra stayed behind to speak with a few team leads, then walked up to the second-floor overlook that faced the main lobby. He watched Serena at the front desk, calmly issuing a keycard while checking a schedule on her tablet. Arturo passed behind her, heading toward the kitchen with a clipboard tucked under one arm. In the far corner, Lydia was restocking the coffee station, chatting with one of the newer housekeepers. He stood there for a long time, just watching. Eventually, he made his way to the back corridor near the loading dock. Julia was just finishing the last room on the third floor. Her cart was half empty, and her gait was slower than it had been earlier in the week. You've done enough today, he said, stepping beside her. Still have 2 rooms left. They'll wait. I already cleared it with Serena. She looked at him, unsure. You've earned a seat, not just a break. This time, she didn't argue. They walked together to the employee lounge, where a few staff were eating late lunch. Ezra grabbed a chair and turned it around, sitting with his arms folded over the backrest. You ever think about training? He asked. Julia looked up from her sandwich. Training for what? Supervisory work, team coordination, maybe even management eventually. That's never been on the table. It is now. She studied him cautiously. You offering? I'm offering to sponsor your certification, if you're interested. Not as a favor, as an investment. She didn't answer right away. Then she said quietly, I'd need help with the English parts. Some of the forms are hard. Then we'll get you that help. He stood, gave her a nod, and stepped out. Later that evening, Ezra sat in the makeshift office Serena had taken over. She was reviewing next week's staffing chart, her brow slightly furrowed. You'll need someone to cover late check-ins Tuesday, she said without looking up. I'll stay on site through then, he said. After that, you have full authority to make interim hires. She exhaled slowly. Still can't believe he left things the way he did. Ezra stayed quiet for a moment, then spoke carefully. I could have caught it earlier, but I didn't. I listened to numbers instead of people. You're listening now, she said, tapping the screen. He looked at her. How long did you think about walking out? He asked. She paused, then said, a few times, but I didn't want to leave the rest of them behind. You didn't, you held the place up. They worked side by side for another hour, finalizing schedules and reviewing vendor contracts. Everything Serena did was methodical, not rushed. She understood the flow of the building in a way no outsider ever could. Before leaving, Ezra stood by the office door. You'll have support, he said. Not just from me, from the whole network. We're restructuring oversight. No more silos. No more middlemen who vanish when things get hard. She nodded once, about time. As he left the hotel the next morning, the front desk staff gave him a brief nod. No fanfare, no ceremony, just acknowledgement. Outside, snow had stopped falling. The roads were clear but damp, the kind of cold that settled into the bones without warning. Ezra looked back at the building. The hotel wasn't fixed, not yet, but it had been reclaimed. And this time, he wouldn't let it slip out of reach again.